say anything? We'll show the trailer.
No, you're showing the trailer,
Yeah.
so we'll talk after the trailer.
Yes,
no?
sir. Yeah. Thanks everyone for making the move. We'll be showing the trailer for what Vikalp film is showing in March, and that will be followed by the conversation as people settle in. Thanks. Anand, mic. One second. I'm calling you.
There's plenty of seats in front. You don't have to be at the back. Very back people can move.
Well, now that you settle, I don't have to say how unsettling Anand's films have been. I don't think either he expects or any one of you expect me to say how wonderfully well made, etc., how much he has risked his life in making. All of that is absolutely evident and need not be stated. Need not be stated. It would be a trivialization of what he's doing if I were to get into the niceties of the filmmaking, and that's not the issue. The issue is the first one and this one together, they tell three stories. Three stories. And since we are in 2024, these stories become extremely pertinent. So the three stories as I read in these, I saw the first, yesterday I was not here, and these stories begin in 100 years ago, 1920. You saw, the mercy petition of 1920, which got Savarkar freed. And in fact, Gandhi also wrote, out of compassion, on request of Savarkar's brother, that some of these people should be let free. I mean, even that gratitude did not stop them from killing Gandhi. So one story is Gandhi's story. 1920 is the year when Tilak died. Gandhi became the focus in the Congress, and a new version of India started unfolding before us. It was an India, as stated so many times in these films, India, this entire Patwardhan family getting into the political stream is from 1920, and the Gandhian, the Sevadal, Gandhian movement starts, independence movement starts, getting to a culmination in 1942. The second story is, since we are in 2024, 1923, Ambedkar published The Question of the Indian Rupee, his PhD thesis, where he said, to impose equality on unequals will be a grave injustice. When Kanhaiya is saying that my father earns 3,000 rupees, how can I, get to, let there be a day when president's son and a laborer's son can study, in the same school. The question of equality, question of freedom and question of equality. And the third story also begins the same time when Hindu Mahasabha was active, and then comes RSS 1925. And this Savarkar's idea of militarized Hindu and Hindu as military for Rashtra Nirmiti. Also, in 1923, Savarkar wrote the text called The Essentials of Hindutva, in which he laid down 7 principles, one of which was that only those whose I'm using his words, whose Pitru Bhumi is the same as his Punya Bhumi. The story is not just about violence, himsa. Anand is saying much more in this film. That's what, as I understand from his films. Pitru Bhumi and Punya Bhumi. Pitru Bhumi is where one's mother or father are born, father in this case. And Punya Bhumi is where one's religion is born. They have to be identical. Only those whose birthplace and the place of the birth of that person's religion are identical, they alone can become citizens in the full sense of this citizenship. All others will remain perpetually suspected citizens. That was the thesis that 1923. So these 3 stories, the idea of citizenship that Savarkar promotes, the idea of equality with which Ambedkar came, and the idea of compassion and humanity with which Gandhi brought in, the idea of truth and non-violence. Anand's films are showing the status of these 3 stories in our time. And they invite us to follow reason, to think. And that term reason, in both senses, reason also means the cause, and reason means rationality. So brilliantly brought together. That I think after seeing these films, if anybody can say, well, it happened to Gauri, it happened to Kalburgi, but I am safe. My children are in the US. My cousins are in powerful positions. We are making a historic mistake of ignoring what is surrounding us. And when he was making these films, there was at least a pretense of shame. But now, even that has been dropped since January 2024. So it's a horrific saga, but it's not only, these films are not depressing to me. These films also have hope because of these three stories. This one story goes all the way back to Buddha. Another goes all the way back to a humanitarian, religious, Upanishadic, Vasudeva Kutumbakam kind of idea. And the third story goes to Manusmruti. So it's not without hope that this is not showing a dystopia. He's showing what our minds should see within our minds. And to that, because of that, I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that in a very different medium, in a very different time, he is as great as Rabindranath Tagore was in Tagore's times. He returned the Filmfare Award, or what a Sangeet Natak Academy Award. I did, and after Kalburgi's murder.
No, I, along with others, returned a national award to protest Kalburgi's murder. Yeah.
So both of us did that, and television on that day had branded him and all others, like Rahmat Tarikeri from Karnataka, for instance, and Kusum Bale, author, is Devanur Mahadev, as anti-national. Anti-national. Because they don't subscribe to this idea of Pitru Bhumi and this Punya Bhumi. That is the idea of, and this Akhanda Bharat. You know why this Akhanda Bharat? Why up to Afghanistan? Because the Vedas were composed, the place where Vedas, Rigveda was composed was Afghanistan. So they want to grab that. Absolutely, completely anti-modern, completely anti-democratic. Yeah, you never heard this. But let me, the development of the Sanskrit language tells that story. And this Saraswati belongs to rivers in Afghanistan and is not in India anywhere. So, Saraswati-like river there. What Anand is doing is like a great Russian novel, telling a long story of several generations. Anand is bringing a story of 1920s to 2020s. This is the story of India. Actually, all his films put together should have title India, and then the subtitles Reason and Vasudeva Kutumbakam. This is how all adjectives fail. I wanted to say tremendous or great, and I know that those words mean nothing. But if we see this and go home and have our lunch and enjoy it, I think Anand should be blamed for making failed films. I stop there, and you will have questions, so you may please ask those things.
I just wanted to interrupt. Nobody is, Ganesh Devi hasn't been introduced to you. I mean, of course, most of you know, but amongst the many great achievements that he has, he's a very internationally well-known linguist. So we put that into the
Well,
context.
I'll set that aside, but I can introduce myself differently. I used to live in Gujarat. I was present there in 2002. Surekha, my wife, and we put up a relief camp, which was instantly, dismantled by the district and the state authorities. But we moved to Dharwad after Dr. Kalburgi was killed. And with me, many writers from India who had written their awards, we formed, artists, writers, we formed a movement called Dakshinayan, going south, going south. And we now live in Dharwad because we wanted that we should be of some use to the family, Kalburgi family. Because for me, Kalburgi was not just a news, not just a tragedy, but a reality, and we wanted to enter that reality in our own little way. So we live in Karnataka. Thank you.
Hi. Before we move to the question, we would be remiss if we didn't introduce Professor Devi, who's been very gracious in doing several podcasts with us, but he is an author, a cultural critic, he's a literary critic, and he's in charge of setting up the People's Linguistic Survey of India as well as the Adivasi Academy. So thank you, Professor Devi, for being here. I request those with questions to wait for the mic, and please keep your questions short and come back.
Hi. Yeah. Okay, so I would like to talk about courage because today even to have reason and to think has become an act of dissent in itself. And this was a question that I had in my mind yesterday itself when I was watching the other films also. But today's film makes it even more relevant. The group of rationalists, like I'm safely assuming most of us in this room, are being pushed into the shadows or into our graves, again, like this film illustrates. How do you, and me, I'm an ordinary, unknown person, and even when I post a social media post occasionally with an unpopular point of view about the current political scenario, I am told to be careful. And I joke that, okay, I'll just not go for a morning walk. But I want to hear from you, Anand sir, how do you have this courage to do what you've been doing all these years?
Well, I think that if we get frightened, then they have already won. If we get frightened and shut up, then they might as well have shot us because we'd be as quiet as if we were dead. So if you want to prove that you're alive, you have to speak up. And I think that the risks that people like me take are minimal compared to the risks that ordinary people take. The risk of being Muslim, the risk of being Dalit, the risk of being anybody who doesn't have power. It is an everyday risk. So I think when someone like me who comes from privileged communities that are somewhat protected, whom if something happens to, the media will take notice of, that we have that privilege that we cannot not use it, because we have to use it to do our contribution to how the resistance can be.
So Devi, this is directed to you based on the comments you made just now, as well as some of the background that we got from the films that we've been watching for the last 3 days. I remember you were saying that Hitler got Savarkar's work translated into German after he became the Chancellor. Now, this is interesting because Hitler was contemptuous, is supposed to be contemptuous of Indians. So that makes an even stronger point that what Savarkar was saying in the 1920s was being appreciated while Hitler was in power. Would you like to comment on that?
Anand's may I
Yeah,
answer?
please.
No, the point is, you're obviously referring to one of my lectures given here some months back. Yes, about maybe 2 months back. No, the fact is, Hitler himself wrote a book in 1924 called Mein Kampf. He was not in charge of. He had still not acquired power. This was the beginning of his political career. He was into politics just a few years by then. When he rose to power, he sent one of his persons to Bombay to meet Savarkar. And he realized that a brand of fascism is emerging there, and they acquired copies of Savarkar's books. I don't think they got them translated into the German language. I'm not aware. But this shows that Hitler recognized instantly the brand of fascism that was growing in India when Gandhi was the most popular, while Gandhi was the most popular leader in India. Hitler could see that, well, here is fascism. And fascists of the, just as, workers of that, there is a beautiful Marathi song sung by a revolutionary poet, this husband and wife. Sachin and Sheetal is, Sheetal is saying that, all people come together. Fascists of the world come together. Fascists of the world come together. And so in our independence struggle, there was attempt to sow seeds of fascism. Those seeds, there was a question to Anand the day before yesterday about inheritance. That was a tough question, difficult question, and I've been thinking about it. That perhaps those of us who should have in the 80s and 90s taken care of some of these things and not allowed this tendency to grow, we failed in our duty. Dabolkar himself, while part of the Rashtra Seva Dal, was neglected by Rashtra Seva Dal in Pune when he started this Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti. So it is history. However, courage is not in short supply in this country. I mean, the way Rohit Vemula's suicide note is so powerful. So it is more powerful than any Dharma Grantha today. It has every quality of imagination, metaphysics, politics. It's extraordinary note. In fact, it should be engraved on stone in every city, at the entrance of every city, that as an example of what great courage and what great questions. He will come to be remembered as Socrates centuries from now, if that statement remains alive, and if there is no mix-up, because these people try to change words. Entire Gandhi's collected works, so many changes are introduced in Gandhi's writings now, officially. Tridip Surud, a great Gandhian scholar in Ahmedabad, has come out with list of the words that the BJP government has added to collected works of Gandhi and deleted words from Gandhi's volumes. So if Rohit Vemula's note remains alive, and thank you for keeping it alive, then it will be a Socratic question for the people. Thank you. But questions should be for Anand. And yeah.
We're lucky to have Mr. Devi, so both of us will answer here.
The critique of Hindutva is often made from the viewpoints of reason, secularism, equality, and there's no doubt those critiques should be made. But shouldn't there also be a critique about how it is damaging to Hinduism itself? Because it indoctrinates Hindus into believing that their faith is so untethered it cannot survive on spiritual practice and needs a supporting geography. That their faith is so fragile that it's rendered vulnerable by the presence of an other they outnumber by 4 times. And that the divinities they worship are so emasculated that they are in need of human protection.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And even in the texts that are often seen very, rightly so, often seen very critically. Like if you look at the Ramayana, people don't talk about the Shambhuka story, the fact that Ram killed somebody, beheaded Shambhuka because he was studying the Vedas. Not supposed to, as a non-upper caste, he was not supposed to have any access to the religious texts. So Ram was egged on to go and kill Shambhuka. But this is the story. This is a story not in Tulsidas Ramayana. This is a story from the earlier Ramayans. So it's been set aside. And there are hundreds of stories of this kind that are set aside. But there are also in these same texts that everybody which are so popular all over the country, there are passages which indicate the other side to Hinduism, this other side of our belief system, which many of them are very positive. So many stories from Mahabharata and Ramayana would actually show us a different path if somebody chose to highlight them. And people have, but it's not what the common person hears. It's not what the TV serials makes films about. Yeah, please.
No, your question is what has this Hindutva done to Hinduism? And actually, the votaries of Hinduism, real Hinduism, if there is any real Hinduism, should question the Hindutva people. That's your question, as I understood. It is being done. Some of the articles by Shiva Vishwanathan point out that the worst harm that these people are causing is to Hinduism. Forget about India, forget about humanity, equality. That the entire face of Hinduism is changed. But Anand shows it in, say, this entry to Sufi shrine. Those questions are actually the questions being asked to this idea of militant, masculine, regimentative idea of religion. He's raised those questions. And by the way, let me share this here. Aurobindo Ghosh was one, he's treated as a kind of saint. He had done this image of Bharat Mata in 1905. But in 1950, just before his death, he was stating unequivocally that this idea of Hindu Rashtra being promoted is the worst damage to the spirit of Hindu scriptures. It comes from Aurobindo Ghosh, then we don't need, he was the most learned of the Hindus. This is in his revised introduction to the human cycle. He says, if the great Hinduism is also great as a religion, not Hindutva. The two are different. Hindutva is a political version. Hinduism, Hindu ideas, they are also noble ideas. So Aurobindo is saying that if these ideas are interpreted by anybody who remains in narrow confines of a nation, then he is destroying these ideas. It has come. It has come from many people. Gandhi himself has commented on this during his times. Gandhi was a great Hindu saint. Gandhi was very proud in calling himself a Sanatani, but a humanistic Sanatani.
It's similar in a sense, I keep drawing these parallels, to what a section of the Hasidic Jews are saying about Israel, about the creation of Israel. They're actually marching in the streets of New York protesting against Israel. Very orthodox Hasidic Jews who say that Zionism is the enemy because Zionism is nothing to do with Judaism, because Judaism is not talking about a piece of land in one particular place. And Zionism, as it's interpreted, is a nationalist idea, is a, trying to grab territory and say this is our religion. So it's a real mix-up between the spiritual ideas behind most religions and converting that into a territorial battle.
Hello. Yes. So in the political, social, and cultural environment that we are in today, where sometimes even talking to your own friends and family is very, very difficult, and sometimes you just feel like you are a lone voice in a sea of people who are probably talking in a different language. What, in your opinion, is the face of resistance, and how can we probably make people see what we are seeing, I'm guessing there's no undoing this, but how do we resist what is happening?
There is undoing, because if you're talking about in your own family, because if we are addressing ourselves or engaging in dialogue with near and dear people, so you have so much agreement in other spheres. You're eating together, you love each other at many levels, and this is the one thing where you differ on. So I don't know how, but everybody has to do it in their own way. But you can't be cowed down by your loyalty as a family or your respect for elders or whatever it might be. I think that if you don't actually put your point of view forward, you are doing violence to them, because you are treating them as if they're the other. If you don't engage, if you don't honestly present your own views, your belief in secular values, your belief in humanism, and you don't fight for that, you don't argue back when you're confronted with something else, even within your own family, you're actually disrespecting your family. You're actually doing violence to them. They might just approve if you just keep quiet, but then there's no honesty.
This is more of a meta question, so apologies if I'm derailing the conversation from talking about this. It's more to understand about the art form, or like that is documentary making or filmmaking, right? So when your approach to it does the artistic intent precede the intent to capture the message, or is it the other way around, or is the reflected artistic rawness more a byproduct of an unintended consequence from the way it was captured throughout?
So is the artistic, meaning, well, I don't know exactly what you're asking, but maybe I'll answer it this way, that if your whole pursuit is to make art, then you'll never be able to make it. Because you don't set out making art as your goal. It can't be self-conscious creation. What is art actually? It's a completely, nobody has defined what art is. But I would say roughly, art is something that survives through time and geography. That is something that can be only understood in retrospect. You can't, while you're making art, that's some con, you're fooling the public or fooling yourself. Because it's not, it's something that if it has value through time and through, take it to another culture and just explain what it is and it communicates, I think that is I would say, closer to my definition. Nobody knew when Van Gogh was alive that he was an artist. Nobody respected. He couldn't even sell his paintings to anyone. It's like, and later he became, you You can't buy his paintings for love of money. So, yeah, so art is not, I think that when you're just, as a filmmaker, as a writer, or as anything, you're actually trying to communicate your angst to the world. Your preoccupation, you're trying to present it as best that you can. And then whatever happens, happens after that. So it's not a question of technique. It's not a question of, oh, do I have the right camera? You're there at the right time. Whatever, by any means necessary, you record it if you think it's valuable. And whether you have money or not, you still put it together.
I'm tempted to intervene.
Yeah.
I mean, there is, of course, agitation, propaganda, art. That's questionable. But there's a lot of great art in every form of art that's born in the specific context. And the context is written in large letters there. I say Hemingway's Arms and Men, or Orwell's 1984. And that's not agitprop. It's not. Or Albert Camus' Plague, for that matter. And nobody can say it's not a work of art. Or Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. Nobody can say it's not great art. All great art is born in Shakespeare's Coriolanus comes because there were food riots in London 4 years before that play was written. And so Shakespeare shows a way, exactly like what happened after demonetization. He shows an arrogant ruler who is very proud of his crown. Corona is the word for crown in Latin. Yeah. So Coriolanus, the one who wears the crown, is born out of food riots in London. But one cannot say, no, it's not a work of art. All great work of art, or take your Picasso, all great work of art, or great music, all great work of art is born out of very intense and three-dimensional engagement with the context. So there is nothing like art for art's sake, even theoretically possible in the world, except great absurdity, written or made only for oneself and never disclosed. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in the film, at one part you show.
Yeah.
So in the film, there was an instance where you're showing Haji Ali Dargah and this group of people, men and women outside, and they're shouting how women shouldn't be allowed to enter the mosque, and one man declared that he is a Hindu, and I suppose many of the women are also not Muslim. So I'm wondering, it's very interesting. How do you see, how do you understand it? What are your insights, and do you see it as a part of the bigger project to push through the current RSS BJP Hindutva agenda? Because clearly they're trying to engage with the women's question, Muslim women's question, in one way is that, how we are trying to save Muslim women by banning triple talaq and all of that. And on the other hand, we see all these women, Muslim women, coming out on streets with the most creative, beautiful ways, resisting. So maybe they are trying to do some conscious unraising campaigning that they're trying to bring out, which we don't really read on the newspapers and all. But in this one shot, I felt like maybe something like that is going on. So how do you really understand it?
So at that moment, I was quite shocked because I thought he is Muslim because he's talking about women cannot enter this area, the mosque and all that. And then he turns out saying, I built a mosque and my name is Rajesh Shah. But he also points out that he is part of the Shiv Sena. He's the Shiv Sena something committee. So, we live in a complicated world in which all kinds of alliances take place for financial reasons or for control reasons or whatever. So obviously the Shiv Sena in Muslim areas will want to make an entry, and what better way than to build a mosque. And also religious places are also money-making devices, because you get some kind of income out of building a religious place. So this is some kind of business activity or political activity, but he's there, and because he represents the mosque, he's against women's entry to the mosque. So yeah, it's part of the complexity of our world.
Yeah, this is a question to the filmmaker who have filmed India for so long and also have seen the evolution of smartphones and social media. That on the scale of 1 to 10, where you will put India right now on the polarization, scale of polarization, 1 to 10, where you will put India at, and how much probably time we have that we will be reaching 10.
So this firstly the question, it's interesting, but this idea of 1 to 10, it's something that we have learned from watching, TV and the kind of stuff. Everything has to be ranked, otherwise you won't understand it. Because supposing I say 7, what sense does it make? Like. Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The digitalization of our thought process is a problem. No, because that is the tragedy of modern life, that we digitize our own thinking, which is not actually a digital mind. It doesn't go yes, no to everything.
When do you think it'll get to the most extreme level?
Yeah.
Can I ask a little bit on the same?
Yeah.
So regarding the title of the movie is Vivek. So we talk about Gandhi Hatya so many times. So excuse me, I came a bit late, so I might have missed out in the beginning of it. But do you also talk about the carnage of Brahmins that happened after Gandhi Hatya? So does it deserve that footage as a title in Vivek?
The attacks on the Brahmin community?
On the Brahmins, the brutal murders of Brahmins.
By the way, I partly am a Brahmin also, by not twice born, because my family was luckily progressive and I'm a kind of second generation socialist. So nobody asked me to do my munja, or nobody forced me to wear my sacred thread to prove that I'm a citizen or can have learning or whatever, and other people should beware because I'm wearing this thread. But I know that Brahmins got attacked in several places, but Brahmins, it's dangerous to say Brahmins. We're generalizing. There's different. In the Brahmin community, there was an extremely progressive group that fought for reforms, and I mean, if you look at women's rights, everything. There was Maharshi Karve. There were people Brahmins who supported Mahatma Phule. So there is a big divide. There was a Brahmin who actually, with Dr. Ambedkar, burnt the Manusmriti. So there are Brahmins who have stood up for change and stood up against their own self-interest in terms of caste. But there's undeniable that there are Brahmins who, and probably a large number of Brahmins who supported the ideas of Savarkar and Hindu Mahasabha and RSS. And it's a fact that after Gandhi was murdered, Brahmins distributed sweets. Brahmins celebrated. So the attacks were not out of the blue attacks. The attacks were because there were people who were celebrating the murder of Gandhi.
So the ones killed were the ones who were celebrated, not the innocent ones.
Pardon? No,
The ones who got killed
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the pain that you feel for the death of Brahmins, I feel that pain also. It's not, I feel the pain of anybody who gets killed, because even if I don't agree with the person, I certainly don't want them dead. I want them to talk to me. I want to discuss it with them and hopefully get them out of that mad kind of divisive thinking. So yes, I would say that, but I would also not support a film like Kashmir Files, because it talks about the Pandits killing in, I don't know if you've seen Kashmir Files. Okay, so that is, to me, is a horribly propagandist film that talk, I mean, not that the Kashmiri Pandits were not killed, and not that we should protest that, or we should have done it. By the way, Kashmiri Pandits, even the BJP never helped them. You know, they were brought them from Kashmir and they put them in some refugee camp in Delhi and kept them in those conditions as a showpiece to say, here are the Kashmiri Pandits and look what's happening to them. They didn't actually absorb them into society and give them, you know, rehabilitate people. And they didn't try to solve the problem in Kashmir either. Try to create dialogue between the Hindus and the Muslims in Kashmir. Had Gandhi been alive, it would not have happened like that. Yeah.
So add to this on facts, because it's a very major question. It is true that Godse was a Brahmin from Maharashtra, and in many places in Maharashtra, the houses of Brahmins were burnt after, Gandhi was killed out of anger. I'm not justifying that anger. But I will give you two instances. One is, there was an attempt on Gandhi's life in Panchgani before this final assassination took place. Several years before that, in I think 1936 or 37. It was hatched, this conspiracy was hatched in a school in Panchgani, and that school was burnt. I know those people, therefore I'm saying out of personal knowledge. After the school was burned down, the majority of Panchgani population was Maratha or OBC, what we call OBC today. They got together after this anger had subsided, and they helped the school to come up again. Not just that, Rajmohan Gandhi later decided to set up his own organization there, and he established very cordial relations with that school. And his angle was that historic revenge is the most barbarous of the acts. So this is factually so. The second example is, Godse was inducted in the RSS by a man called Apte, and Anand has shown photographs of both of these. This Apte had a family in Sangli. Godse was a tailor in Sangli at that time. He was working as a tailor at that time in Sangli. And the Apte house was burnt in Sangli. The Raja of Sangli used to be a Brahmin, and he was rather lenient towards the Godse Apte kind of line of thinking. But in Sangli, some Maratha leaders, which included a man called Vasant Dada Patil, who many years later became Chief Minister of Maharashtra, he actually helped the Apte family to get land for cultivation. And many from that family later became doctors and so on. So there was a support network, which also, there was anger, houses were burnt, and it was wrong. It was wrong. But people did not continue that kind of animosity unilaterally. Whereas the temple in Gujarat was destroyed some 1,000 years back. we don't know who and who destroyed, but revenge is being taken now, and that's wrong. I have seen both these instances in my lifetime, I've seen both the Sangli and Panchgani case. I know the individuals involved. Therefore, I am presenting this to you, and perhaps this might be of some use to people who think that, oh, but when Gandhi was killed, so much of violence took place. No, that is not to be seen as mindless violence, mindless ones. I'm not saying it's justified violence, but others in the society put reason in the minds of those who were violent and brought them back from the path of violence.
And for that matter, even Gandhi himself, there were earlier attacks on him, and he insisted that no action should be taken on the people trying to attack him.
Hello. First off, thank you for making all the art you do. I come from a very casteist Hindutva extended family, and it is, seeing documentaries, reading books by that you have written or your contemporaries have written, that immensely helped me see the reality that is very present in India. So I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you feel that right now, earlier, let's say in 2016, if you wanted to express dissent or, express criticism against the government, you were labeled as anti-national or Naxal or Tukde gang. But do you feel that, especially in context of the Ram Mandir consecration, now instead of anti-national, it has become an anti-Hindu. And, by implication, the nation is being constituted as, a Hindu nation. So if you're against the nation, that automatically implies you're against Hinduism. So right now, when I criticize the government or I put up a post, I am labeled as anti-Hindu, which I was labeled as anti-national earlier. So do you think that's a dangerous trend that is happening?
This terminology keeps changing. So in the old days, they would call you a leftist, a Marxist or a Maoist or whatever, something that they don't like. And then it became then you're anti-national, then you're anti-Hindu. And now it's gone so far as they call you an intellectual. Yeah, yeah. Because they're anti-thinking. They've reached the stage where if you try to counter something with a rational argument, that itself is something that not preferred. You have to be a bhakt, you have to believe.
So the question is open-ended. There are many things that we need to do, we should do. But your thoughts on what citizens in this country who believe in rationality and who don't believe in hate and violence, what are the things that we should be doing and what should we be doing before 2024 elections?
That's an answer in the question already. So, it's good to see that at least Devi ji has been talking about going south. At least the south has actually stood its ground. So you could see what is happening as a northern kind of phenomena, which has some tentacles in the south as well. But by and large, I think we can talk about why that is the case, whether it goes back to the concept of Aryans, and the Aryans didn't go that far down south, didn't penetrate far enough, or it's something that has happened for other reasons. But I think wherever you have a society and a system in which freedom of expression actually exists and you can actually argue with people and not get beaten up for it, then you have to protect that space and expand it. I don't know if you want to...
I'm surprised at your question, because Karnataka provided an answer to your question for the rest of India very recently. Devanur, Mahadev, Tarikeri, all those who had written their awards, they made an appeal, Anand, Edelu Karnataka, wake up Karnataka. And Karnataka woke up. Now, the breakfast is not very good, after that I know, but it doesn't matter. I think set aside those, in normal times, lackluster governments is a problem, but we are in abnormal times. And the danger is not just for Indian Republic or human, it's also for Hinduism. I'm born Hindu and I feel worried. I'm born Indian, I feel worried. And I'm also born as a human being, I feel worried. It's very unusual times. And this time, set aside all the normal likes, dislikes. There's only one time in 5 years when this thumb is of some use. Use it. Thank you.
Two, I think, small questions. One is about this Hemant.
I feel terribly bad making such a statement after being an intellectual for last 7 decades. And recently the IIT cancelled my lecture saying that he is a cultural activist. Cultural activist. Because on my website is written cultural activist. So lecture. So thumb. This is the Edelu Karnataka.
You talk about this Hemant Karkare's murder. This actually is a fact I don't know how many of us, because we live in Karnataka, are even aware of. Will you talk a little bit more about it? And I have another question. This was a film like I watched with tears and goosebumps and all of that. What are you doing to show this more, so that more people can see it?
So, my dilemma is always that as a filmmaker who doesn't take money before the film is made from anybody, I do have to try to monetize it somehow after it's made. So I keep the English subtitle versions a little safe and try to sell that wherever I can. But I put the Hindi version or the language versions, translated versions, for free on YouTube. So I did that. This film was made in 2018. By 2019, it was on YouTube for free. And you can find the long version on YouTube, but it's in 16 parts, because I also know that the people's attention span these days has been reduced so badly that these parts were put out as little episodes. The sad part is that then it loses a kind of chronology, because you might get this one part from end of the film, and you might get one part from the early part. So you have to, you'll have to see. It is now in order on YouTube. You can find with Hindi subtitles, not with English subtitles. Wherever we get this kind of space, we show the film intact. Again, today we couldn't show the long version, but we showed this version. So.
A little more about Karkare's murder.
Karkare's murder, yeah. So that is the most unbelievable part of Reason, Vivek. Nobody, even when we first brought it out, which is the longer version, which has much more argument in it and evidence, people didn't want to believe this at all. Because the mechanisms that they control are so incredible, and the media is so cooperative and so uninterested in probing anything beyond the official line that nobody wanted to accept that this is possible. But actually, Mushrif wrote the book Who Killed Karkare, and his book is full of evidence, and full of evidence gathered from where? Mostly from the court papers, proceedings that went on in court, looking at that. I mean, for instance, the fact that the bullets in Karkare's body do not match the bullets from Kasab or Ismail, the two people that they say killed, who killed Karkare. There's lots and lots of evidence. The fact that when they recorded all these Pakistani terrorists who were guiding the, Pakistani, what are they called? Handlers in Pakistan, talking to these operatives holed up in the Taj Mahal. And these these were all monitored because the Indian agencies had already put their SIM cards, because they knew the Pakistanis come and pick up SIM cards in India. So they had a lot of SIM cards which were actually they had access to. So they were listening to this conversation, and it came on TV many times, all these conversations. I used the excerpt from TV, where these people are talking to each other, guiding them, and they don't talk about Kasab. They name all the other people who got killed, but they don't talk about Kasab. And they don't even know, they are wondering themselves who killed Karkare, because that's not part of the plan. So there were two parallel attacks that took place that day. One attack is the one that everybody knows about, which is on the South Bombay, the Taj Hotel, the Oberoi, and the Leopold Cafe. No, this South Bombay, very tip of Bombay, Kolaba, and this area was the Pakistanis. But the information that the Pakistanis in their boat are coming to do a terror attack, which the Americans had provided, the American intelligence had provided to RAW, there's evidence that RAW never passed on that information to the Coast Guard or to the Indian Navy. So, this boat could have easily been, they'd given exact coordinates of this boat. It could have been tracked. So, but somehow that information didn't go to Indian security, but it went to the Hindutva. And the Hindutva then launched a parallel attack in CST. And that's why I point out that in CST, 42% of the people killed were Muslims, visible Muslims, women with burqas and identifiable Muslims, beards. Now these Pakistani militants, however nutty they might be, they won't kill 42% of Muslims who are visibly Muslims. So that's one clue. Like that, there are many, many clues that gives you the idea, and then you go back and ask why. Why did they want to kill Karkare? And for that you have to go to the videotapes and that found in the laptops of Colonel Purohit and Shankaracharya, one of the people arrested. And these laptops were very revealing because they had recorded these meetings that they had all around India, in which they are talking, in one place they're talking about how they have already recruited Israel and Nepal and other countries to help the militancy project here. And then they had decided that whoever gets in the way has to be killed. That's also in the transcripts of what they're doing. So they were willing, and Karkare himself knew that there was possibly going to be an attack on him. He had said so even on the day that he got killed. He had rung up Digvijay Singh in the Congress saying that I'm under threat. When Digvijay Singh pointed that out, he was called an anti-Hindu, anti-national, and he was denigrated. And nobody, and then this Raghuvanshi, who was earlier the ATS chief, and the day Karkare was killed, again he was made ATS chief. By the way, all this is happening under Congress's watch. But Congress is helpless to stop it because it's already, the system has been infiltrated. The bureaucracy is infiltrated. The machinery of enforcement is infiltrated. So even if the Congress wants, it's not easy for them to have clean enough, secular enough people who will take action.
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to ask, you've been working with making these films for quite some time now.
And sorry, one more thing I wanted to say is actually again, the longer version gives you more evidence, but the fact that the prosecutor in the matter was Salyan, I think she must be Kannadiga. Mangalore, yeah. She turned out to be a very brave person who was willing to speak out. She said, I can't, it's against my conscience not to speak out. Although there was real threat to her to come out and speak on camera.
Yeah, so you have been working with making these films for a while, which means you've also been interacting with people in the RSS and other organizations like this for a while. And I wanted to ask, is there any significant demographic change in the people that get involved in the RSS over the years that you have seen, or has it stayed relatively the same? And overall, what sort of background do these people come from?
The demographic change is very much there, because RSS would have begun as a very upper caste body in the initial stages and for quite some time. But what they have done is, because as you know, RSS was banned in 1948. And then they came back into being in 1949 on the grounds that they wouldn't involve themselves in politics. So with the assurance that they will not get into politics, they were then reinvented themselves as a cultural body. And they did, they had their shakas that woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and got little boys trained. All of that they did. As we talked about earlier, the people who believed in killing Gandhi were very unpopular, and it probably came as a bit of a surprise to them in 1948. Some of them must have imagined, I mean, Savarkar and all imagined that once we bump off Gandhi, then we have the road clear for us. Because the reason that they killed Gandhi is also because Gandhi is appealing to their own constituency, the people that they are trying to say, you are Hindus and this is what Hinduism is. Biggest obstacle was Gandhi. Later on, the biggest obstacle was Dabholkar and other Hindus. So they also target the Hindus that actually have a mass appeal, that actually are doing the work. Gauri Lankesh, people who were effective communicators. So they've not randomly killed a few people. They've targeted the ones. So the demographics has changed quite significantly since in the latest version of the country that we are now. I mean, for instance, after Modi came to power, they had a campaign which was like a missed call campaign. You become a member just by sending a missed call. So then you have and somebody told me that India had, the penetration of internet is about 48% in India. I mean, 48% have cell phones and the thing gets to, but it's soon going to be 100%. Soon we'll have a country that everyone has a phone, everybody will get the WhatsApp, everybody can make a missed call and become a member. And so it's a takeover. It's a pretty massive takeover. And the problem is that the minority that's probably represented here, the people who do ask questions, it's a shrinking minority unless you actually become active. Yeah. Quick one.
I wasn't going to ask this, but you're talking about the internet. And one thing that is not censored in India is Yahoo News. I read a lot of Yahoo News, and there will be a lot of articles from different sources, most of them from outside of India. And after every article, there are comments. You can put down comments. And every time that there is an article by a foreign journalist who criticizes India, the answer is always, everybody always criticizes India if they're not here. Sort of thing. There is one, and there's so much anti-secularism and hate speech on these things. There is one person, he goes by the moniker Aguirre, Wrath of God. And he's one of the worst, and I have great fun answering him.
Okay.
But I have two very simple questions.
We won't have time for two.
Pardon me?
We won't choose